Today I show you how to drive a Trabant because I haven't before and because it's a bit harder than you might think. I'll start with the absolute basics, the controls. Now it won't be too surprising to you, it's set up most like any other modern car, like say a Civic or something. Because just like a Civic, down here to the right of the steering wheel you have the fuel cutoff valve, labeled Z, A, and R. I have no idea what those abbreviations mean, but they stand for on, off, and reserve. Very simple. And also just like a Civic, on the left of the steering wheel you have the choke for the carburetor. Very basic stuff. Above the steering wheel you have the speedometer in kilometers an hour, and that's the only gauge in the entire car. To the left of the speedometer you have, in order, your unlabeled hazard light switch, your headlight switch, your hand windshield washer pump, just a little plunger that comes out, your windshield wiper switch. To the left of the steering column you have your blinker stalk, which does not auto cancel, and if you pull it towards you that's how you control your dim and brights, and if you push forward it's the horn. Now mounted on the right of the steering column is your column mounted 4-speed gear selector. Now it's totally unlabeled, which is confusing at times, but the gear pattern is as follows. Forward and down is first, up second, back towards you and down is third, and then up is fourth. Reverse is all the way forward and down, and down, and down. There we go. That's reverse. For me, the Trabant shift pattern is hard to remember, not just because it's unlabeled, and not just because I'm not used to it. It's also because I have this Saab that also has a 4-speed column-mounted shifter. The only problem is the shift pattern on this car, as it clearly demonstrates on this nice sticker on the dash, is the exact opposite of the Trabant. First is towards you and up, second is towards you and down, third is forward and up, and fourth is forward and down. The exact opposite of the Trabant. And reverse is you pull it toward you, pull out on the knob and down, and that's reverse. I get confused occasionally switching between these two cars. Next to the fuel cutoff switch is the heater controls, and that is every control in the cabin, all of them. There's something very important you need to know before driving a Trabant, because the Trabant is two-stroke. That means it has the biggest flaw of two-stroke engine, because in a two-stroke, the lubrication for the cylinders comes from the oil that's mixed into the gas, and yes, you have to pre-mix it. So that means no throttle equals no lubrication for the engine. So in situations where the engine is spinning at higher RPMs but no throttle is applied, say like coasting, going down a hill, the engine is not getting properly lubricated, and this could lead to your engine going from an engine to a big greasy paperweight, like is done here. Obviously, not having the ability to coast in gear would be unendingly annoying while driving a car, so there are three common solutions to this problem. The first solution is to use a 4-stroke engine. But that's boring. The first real solution is to use an oil injector on the engine block that pumps oil into the engine crankcase independent of throttle input based on engine RPMs. This also has the added benefit of no longer requiring pre-mixed fuel, as the oil injector is pumping in oil for you. This solution is common on several two-stroke Saabs, mostly the performance versions, the Monte Carlo spec engines. The Trabant does not have an oil injector. The second solution is called a freewheel device. A freewheel device in the transmission is a device that allows one-way transfer of torque. And when fit in the transmission, it means the wheels can spin faster than the engine. And it works much like a bicycle. So when the car is going up a hill, the engine power can be used to push the car up the hill, but once you're going down the hill, the engine can return to idle while the wheel still spins, allowing the engine to return to idle so it receives the proper amount of fuel and oil for the speed of the engine. Now the downside of this is that you have absolutely no engine braking. But hey, at least your engine won't turn itself into a giant greasy paperweight. That's pretty neat. A lot of two-stroke cars use this solution. For instance, all two-stroke Saabs have freewheeling transmissions. My Saab even has a freewheeling transmission, and it has a 4-stroke V4 engine. I mean, the freewheel device in mine is locked up, so it's basically a regular transmission at this point, but the idea is still there. The Trabant also has a freewheel device in the transmission, but there's one big caveat. The freewheel device in the Trabant's transmission is only on 4th gear. That means in gears 1, 2, and 3, you're either on the gas or you're in neutral. You can't coast in any gear other than 4th. Now you could just pop in the clutch every time you want to coast rather than popping into neutral, but that's really hard on your throwout bearings. And you could just drive it like a normal car and coast in gear with the engine spinning up with no throttle input, and I'm sure that would last you a while, but you're taking your engine's life into your hands, and you don't really want that on your conscience, do you? Fourth gear, the magical gear, allows you to drive like a sane person. It allows you to drive like the car was designed properly. The Saab that I mentioned from earlier, yeah, its freewheel device is on every gear, like, makes sense. And it also has a little handle under the dash, allowing you to engage and disengage the freewheel device in case you want to drive with engine braking. In the case of my Saab, it has a 4-stroke, so engine braking is perfectly allowed. Or maybe if you have a 2-stroke car and you want to push start it, your starter's dead or something like that. It was designed well. Now with that tiny bit of information out of the way, it's time to start driving. And we should begin. Always remember your useless afterthought seatbelt that will totally save you in a crash. Absolutely. You're in a cotton box and this loosely strewn piece of fabric is going to save you. Now in a cold start, I always find it's necessary to use a good bit of starter fluid, but this car is warmed up, so just turn on the fuel, take off the handbrake, clutch in, and start it up. I should mention before we get going, I've never been able to get this thing to idle right. It's my own fault. Put it in first gear and take off. Now the blinkers don't auto-cancel, but what's more annoying is that I need to clear up some grounds on it. It's a 6-volt system and there's no indicator for me. Oh god, that's third. Start that in first. First is over in an instant, go up to second. Second's over pretty quickly too. Up to third. No tachometer or anything, you just gotta go by the sound of the engine. There's a leak, that's the exact opposite of this thing. And up into fourth. And up into fourth. And up into fourth. Oh, there we go. I think I may have momentarily lost fourth gear. No big deal. I find the optimal cruising speed in this car to be about 70 kilometers an hour. I've reached 70 kilometers an hour, and now I'm going to let off the gas. It's going to return to idle, and I can keep coasting like a normal, sane person. I get it back up to 70 miles an hour, 70 kilometers an hour, excuse me. I find that I never drive in a smooth, consistent way. It's either on the gas or off the gas. I never do any power throttle or anything. This may be overkill to save the engine, but I feel like, you know, this is a fairly rare car in the United States, and I want to save it as much as possible. Right now the car wants to die under idle. Sometimes it idles way too high. I've never been able to figure it out. I think I'm going to take apart the engine in the winter. Light turn green, go. First gear. Up into second, because first gear is over like that. No torque at all. Up into third. Leaving a nice plume of smoke behind me because the engine's a little bit cold. Up into fourth. Yeah, lost fourth gear briefly. I've got a small problem with the transmission. I'm not worried about it. Alright, I'm about to hit 70 kilometers an hour. Optimal cruising speed, crest the hill, and off the gas. Engine returns to idle. I'm still coasting. And that's pretty much it. For the rest of the video, I'm just going to leave you with no me talking at all and just have a couple of minutes of Trabant driving footage. I find that to be peaceful sometimes. This seatbelt is completely meaningless.